How about a big round of applause for all of our speakers so far? By applause, how many of you would say that Elon Levy is your favorite all-time government speaker? By applause, how many of you would say it is so sad that we live in a country where we have a favorite government speaker? Can we look up to athletes and movie stars? Little kids are like, I hate the Attorney General. I love the Chief of Staff. Some applause for everyone who put this together tonight, the staff of Fuckup Nights Tel Aviv-Yafo. Yeah, they're wrong. And my point person was Anat. Is Anat still here in the room? Anat? Give it up for Anat. You are so amazing. We had probably 5 or 6 Zoom calls. Bemet, what you did to my sechel was to build, but you were amazing. And I want you to know that until today, your number was just in my phone as a number, but today I entered you as a contact. Your name in my phone is a not fuck up. So congratulations. I don't know your last name, but you'll come next Friday night for dinner. I'll tell my kids the fuck ups are coming for shit. They're nicer during the day, but no. Are you having a good time so far? Is everyone enjoying it tonight? Yeah, this is amazing. All right. This is called A Different Story. I don't know if you ever mentioned this, but I grew up in Chicago, in the U.S. Well, I guess I'm done. Thank you so much. And I had what you would call, I think, a pretty strong Jewish upbringing. I went to Solomon Schechter Day School and Camp Ramah. Apparently all I have to do tonight is mention places in the Midwest. I went to Congregation B'nai Amunah. Oh, that's where it ends. Conservative movement. But the moment that really changed my life is when I came to Israel for the first time, when I was 17 years old. I came on a teen tour. Anyone else here do the teen tour? Yeah, so if you have, you know what that's like. You're 17 and you come to Israel for 6 weeks and your parents, they want you to fall in love with Masada and the Western Wall and Gifat HaTachmoshet, and you do fall in love. But not with that. What do you fall in love with when you're 17 years old? Let's be honest. Oh, yeah. The Israelis. Because you're 17 years old and your hormones are raging and you get off that El Al plane. And the first thing you notice is how beautiful these Israelis are. The women are all tan and fit with that curly Mediterranean hair. And the men are these hunks with muscles and crew cuts. And it's so odd, because they've got the same roots as we do, right? Eastern Europe, Poland, Germany, except they look like supermodels. And we look like Jews. How did this happen? And the people I loved the most were the soldiers. I mean, here they were, 1 year older than I was. They were 18, I was 17. They had Uzi machine guns, berets, forearms like bricks. And then there was me, slathered in sunscreen, wearing a fanny pack. What was in the fanny pack? Lactose pills. Who would you rather be? In the middle of that trip, my Israeli counselor, Yaniv, gave me a gift. It was a book that literally changed the course of my life. Self-Portrait of a Hero. The Letters of Yonatan Netanyahu. Zichrono Livracha. We all remember Yoni as the leader of that famous raid on Entebbe in July of 1976. But what impressed me as I read his letters was who he was at the start. In basic training, when they had a long, grueling hike and all the other soldiers would drop out, Yoni would rush to the front of the pack and carry the stretcher for miles at a time. When they had a Laila Lavan, and they stayed up all night without sleep training. Other soldiers would complain they were tired, but not Yoni. Yoni wrote about how blessed he was to be able to watch the sun rise over the Judean hills. By the end of that summer, I knew exactly who I wanted to be. So I came home from that trip and told my parents what every Jewish American parent wants to hear. I'm not going to college. I'm joining the Israeli army. And of course, they flipped out. They said, what, why? What, you want to be one of those hunky soldiers hitchhiking by the side of the road that all the American girls fall in love with? Is that it? And I said, well, that's part of it. But the real reason I told them is that in Israel, I actually feel like a more complete version of myself. I can wear a kippah and keep kosher and not have to explain who I am. And I love that I'm part of the story that's bigger than me and that I can help defend the land that our people call home. But there's another reason why I wanted to join the Israeli army, and I didn't tell my parents this one. It's that, deep down, I wanted to be a hero. I wanted to be that guy walking down Ben Yehuda Street on a Saturday night with a beret on his shoulder, M16 across his chest. How amazing would that be? My parents convinced me to go to college first. They thought I'd grow out of it, but I didn't. So in July of 1997, at the age of 23, I flew to Israel on a one-way ticket to join the Israeli army. And this was the late 90s. There was no internet. I couldn't research like what to do or who to talk to, so I just showed up at the Bakum, the Basis Klita Miyun, the induction center, and tried to walk in, but there was a guard, a paratrooper with a really big gun. He stopped me and said, "Hey, ata, ma ata rotze," which means, "What do you want?" And I said, "Bati l'sharet b'tzava Haganah Yisrael k'dei lishmor al ha'am ha'Yehudi." He said, "What language are you talking?" Solomon Schechter Hebrew, But he let me in, and the next thing I know, I am inside the induction center, and it is balagan. Chaos. I keep looking for someone in charge, someone with a clipboard and a whistle around the neck. Who's running this place? It's all children. I call my mom from an orange payphone. She says, "What's it like in the Israeli army?" I said, "Well, imagine a bunch of Israelis running an army." That's the Israeli army. Everyone's shouting and yelling. Nobody knows what's going on. And if someone makes a mistake, they won't apologize. This happened to me my first day in the induction center. I got my uniform, my beret, my boots, and my dog tags. And that's a big moment. When you're a lone soldier, your dog tags. I looked down and it had my personal number, 5481287. It had my first name, Yoel, Hebrew for Joel. But my last name, instead of Chasnoff, it said Shitsnitz. They misspelled my name on my dog tag. And I start freaking out because I know that I'm probably going to go to Lebanon, and I don't want to go to Lebanon fighting Hezbollah with the wrong name on my dog tag. So I go to the guy making the dog tags. He's got sunglasses on, shirt off, full of tattoos, cigarette in his mouth. And I go up to him and I say, "Slicha, yesh li she'ila ketana." on my dog tag. You misspelled my name. What does he say? So don't die. And with that, I board a bus bound for Beit Sefer L'Shilyon, the armored school in the Negev desert, for basic training in the 188th Armored Brigade. And as I roll down south on my bus, I meditate on the kind of soldier I am going to be. I am always going to put the platoon ahead of myself, just like Yoni Netanyahu. I will never complain, and I will volunteer. Always. And for the first few weeks of basic training, that's exactly what I do. I volunteer for everything, no matter how ridiculous it is, because this is the dirty little secret they never tell you when you're becoming a lone soldier in the IDF. You picture a combat unit, you imagine guns, missiles, bombs, explosions, action. But so much of what you do in the army, especially in basic training, is the most mundane, mind-numbing stuff. I volunteer for Avodat Rasar. 12 hours of pulling weeds and painting rocks, while a 60-year-old Moroccan sergeant yells at me to work faster. I work in the kitchen, scraping plates and mopping the entire dining room floor with a sponge head till 2 a.m. And I volunteer to guard everything. You guard everything in the Israeli army. I guard the bunk every night from 2 to 4 in the morning. I guard the platoon bus with the driver still on it. But most emblematic of all is what happens during Shavua Milchama, War Week. We camp out in the desert for 6 days, eating only manot krav, battle rations. But on our last day, our officer, the men, wants to surprise us with a hot meal as a treat. So he orders spaghetti and tomato sauce from the kitchen. So at lunchtime, a jeep pulls up to our campsite in the desert, and the cook gets out of the jeep, and he opens up the back, and he takes out this huge tub of piping hot spaghetti sauce and puts it down on the desert floor, only to realize, oops, he forgot the spaghetti. So he gets back in the jeep and drives back to the kitchen to fetch the spaghetti, and meanwhile, my commander says, I need a volunteer, and I raise my hand, Ken Hamfaked, and he says, Joel, Shmol al Harotev. Guard the sauce. What can I do? I put on my helmet, flak jacket, machzanit be'achnes, and for an hour I walked around the spaghetti sauce like the commando I always dreamed I'd be. And it goes on like this for a few weeks until finally one day I realize I'm the only one who's volunteering. Somehow, I have become the flyer of the platoon. Now, you all know what a flyer is, right? You cannot live in this country and not know. It's a sucker, a dupe, someone who gets taken advantage of. And in Israel, there is nothing worse than being a flyer in the army, all the more so. So I get really upset. Why should I be the flyer who guards in the middle of the night while the other guys sleep? Why should I shmor al harotev when they smoke cigarettes in the sun? So I decide right there on the spot, no more of this, no more guarding in the middle of the night. Screw them. When they send me to the kitchen, I say, nope, I ain't going to the kitchen. Ani lo yachol. You know why? Because I've got shushulim. Diarrhea. I don't really have diarrhea, but I've learned by now that in the Israeli army, shushulim will get you out of everything. One Friday afternoon, it all comes to a head. It's minutes before Shabbat. We're on our beds in our Madei Aleph, our dress uniforms. We're laughing, playing guitar, joking, excited for our Sabbath freedom. When all of a sudden our commander comes into the courtyard of the bunk and announces that he needs 4 soldiers for Shmira Bsisit, base guard duty. 24 hours of walking in a big circle around the perimeter of our base, going out of your mind, your Shabbat gone. Well, this time, instead of raising my hand, I do something else. I hide. Everyone does. Some guys jump out the bedroom window and hide behind the bunk. Others drop to the floor and scoot underneath the bed. And me, I run to the bathroom, lock myself in a stall. And then just to be sure, I actually put my boots up on the toilet seat. I crouch like a catcher behind home plate, so if the commander comes in, he won't see my shoes underneath the door. And as I'm sitting there hiding in the bathroom stall, I feel... Well, at first, I feel proud. I am not going to be the flyer who guards on Shabbat. But almost immediately, I begin to feel something else. A deep sense of disappointment that this is who I am. And along with that disappointment, shame. Shame that I am screwing over 4 of my friends who will now have to guard because I'm sitting in the bathroom, hiding like a coward. My fuck-up. And to be clear, my fuck-up was not the decision to join the Israeli army. I look back on my army service as one of my most meaningful experiences in my life. It's totally changed my relationship with this country, and I could never live here without having done it. But my failure... My failure was thinking that the uniform was enough. That walking down Ben Yehuda Street with an M16 and a beret is what makes you a hero. It's not. What really makes you a hero is staying true to the ideals you've set out for yourself, even when the culture around you is pulling so hard in the opposite direction. And that was my other mistake. I allowed flyer culture to get to me and change who I am. Like the best fuck-ups in all of our lives, this one actually became a turning point. The very next week, I began volunteering once again. Not always, but enough. I even offered to stay back and guard the base on Rosh Hashanah. I mean, after all, I had no family in Israel. Why not let my buddies go home? And I volunteered to carry the Mem Kuf, the 30-pound radio on our Asa Kumta, the March for the Black Beret. And I don't want to brag, but at our end of basic training ceremony at Latrun, I am voted Chayal Mitztayen. So, what was it about my failure that was so impactful? Well, for starters, it was the pain. The pain of hearing my 4 friends, the guys who were caught hiding underneath the bed and who were sent to guard. It was the pain of hearing them cry, Avalama ani. Why me? While I sat there hiding in the bathroom. And it was my hero, Yoni Netanyahu. I thought about him too as I was crouched on the toilet, hiding away. I thought about the letters he wrote home and how he always put the platoon ahead of himself. And I realized that if I want to be like my hero, that means I have to do like my hero. Because if there's one thing we all can agree on, It's that Yoni Netanyahu never would have been that selfish. His brother, me. But that's a different story. Toda rabah.
We really are going to sing a tikva at the end of this. You spoke about the concept of fire and how it is rooted within our society, our culture. And yet when bad things happen, people jump and volunteer. And achi, you can hear it everywhere. I was just in my flight now. There was achi all over the place because how people know each other. How do you reconcile these two sides?
Yeah, so it's an amazing concept. I want to call out my good friend Benji Lovett, who's sitting here in the theater. Benji and I wrote a book together called Israel 201, and we explore the friar concept. And for this chapter, I talked to Tamar Katriel, who is one of Israel's experts on the Israeli personality at Haifa University. And I asked her, how is it on the one hand that we hate being a friar, but we'll volunteer and we'll come to each other's rescue? And she said that the two actually go hand in hand, that Israelis, we are called upon to do so much and to give so much of ourselves that our radar is very attuned for getting screwed over and being asked to do too much. So they're really not a contradiction. They actually belong together. A great question.
Questions? You asked already.
One question per night, man.
Yes.
What advice would you give to your children regarding שירות משמעותי?
What advice would I give to my children? Well, I didn't give them a choice. After my Army service, I moved back to the U.S. for 20 years. But then 9 years ago, we moved back to Israel specifically so my kids could go to high school here and do the Army. I have twins who are in the room tonight, I believe. Stav and Noah. One of whom was it's called Mefanachat Minharot. She was a tunnel researcher in 2019 and 20 at a base you've all heard of called Re'im, and she would always come home on the weekends and say, you don't understand, there's a second Gaza underneath Gaza. And her sister Noam became an officer and served in the Kiryah. So we wanted them to do the Army. I have a kid going in next December, another one who's 15 that we're trying not to think about it yet. But at the end of the day, I have friends whose kids are my kids' age in the U.S., and I see them going through college and posting about how proud they are that they've committed to some university we've never heard of. And at the end of the day, I really do think that there's something to be said for giving to a cause that's bigger than you, reminding you that you're part of a bigger story. And so I'm still very much in favor of Army service. Obviously, it's you got to be more careful now about where you go because you don't want to just be a pawn in someone else's game. But I still believe in it. That's why I'm here.